The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a specialist recruitment agency operating in the metals, engineering and manufacturing industry sectors. Enjoy the pod.
Hey guys, Peter Mike.
The Metal Guys.
We're joined today by Tom Mallens. Good selling is the slogan, isn't it? Not good sales.
It is on my LinkedIn posts, yeah.
You know when we first found you on LinkedIn, both Mike and I used to say good sales all the time because we knew it was wrong. And we were just trying to trigger you into getting vexed about that we couldn't even get a two-word slogan.
It worked. You know, I never told you, but yeah, really used to annoy me.
Did it?
No.
For those of you that don't know Tom, you are the sales trainer of choice for any market sector or specific niche sectors like manufacturing, depending on the audience. Can you just give us a bit of a background on how you've ended up with Sandler? Just kind of give us that kind of run into becoming a trainer.
Yeah, so I'll give you two versions, if I may, of the same story, because ultimately, like I think many people in business and pretty much everyone I've ever met in sales, I fell into sales. I mean, I never grew up thinking, I desperately want to be a salesperson. So first part of my career, I was in journalism, worked in local newspapers, magazines, this kind of stuff. Didn't know where I was going in my career, so I thought, go to university and I'll do a business degree because I couldn't think of anything other than that to do. So did my business degree, still didn't know what I wanted to do, and came out of that, fell into sales and working with a Swiss company selling specialty adhesives. So this is all like technical copolyester, copolyamide adhesives for all kinds of different industrial applications. And I kind of did okay, but there's all the usual kind of sales frustrations that you probably maybe you've experienced yourselves. You know, you go to meetings and they say, hey, this is great, and they're super enthusiastic. They never end up buying anything. Or people constantly trying to beat you down on price, or just feeling like you're working way too hard for too little reward. So I did all that, and then I stumbled across a book, a sales training book, and I read it, and I was like, oh my God, like, why didn't they tell us this stuff like when I started? You know, I would have made them more money, or would have made myself more money, and I would have just had way less stress. So that's what kind of got me started in the direction of doing sales training. The variation of that story is that when I was younger, I was desperately shy, desperately wanted a girlfriend. I had no idea what to say to like a girl. And I got some info online about, how you could get more girls.
Yeah.
Put it into practice, and I thought, this is great. This is the answer to my solution. And when I read the book on sales, I was like, this is like the same stuff. This is like the same stuff, just in a business context. It's about, conducting yourself and carrying yourself with a certain level of confidence, not being desperate, and saying and doing certain things that let people know that you see yourself as having some value, and that makes you more attractive. So when I read that sales training book, I was like, this is the same stuff. Like, if it worked for me in my social and romantic life, maybe it could work for me in my professional life. And that's what kind of got me hooked on, sales training, and thinking that was something useful and valuable to do, and something I enjoyed.
Was it Michael Bolton's,
Michael Bolton's top tips?
Yeah. Mike used to send people the CD of Michael Bolton and sign it.
Did you? Yeah, it worked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
To sell, not to pick up women.
No.
To sell, yeah.
It's just
a second revenue stream.
Yeah, used to work.
Yeah?
Yeah, amazingly, yeah. I think they just felt sorry for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's, Anyway, this is my podcast.
Just a chat.
Yeah.
So I think the logical question is, what was the book?
So the book was, You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar, which is a book by a guy called David Sandler, who was a sales trainer back in the 60s and 70s. And he came up with like a methodology or framework for selling that has been developed kind of ever since. And that's the book that when I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is this is like the stuff I've been looking for. You know, this
How
would have actually helped me.
how'd you find the book? Because normally that's like they're either recommendations. Like I've never read that book. I never even come across it.
I think the real answer is I can't remember exactly. I think I bumped into someone at a networking event that kind of recommended it or talked about it or mentioned it. So that's sort of lost in the mists of my memory, to be honest. But I stumbled across that book, and that's the book that kind of flipped something in my head that I just thought, like, isn't it mad that, like, these companies, like the companies that employed me, their kind of process effectively was, hey, here's some business cards, go and sell something. You know, we assume you know what you're doing when it comes to selling because it's self-evident. But
but that's like most companies, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you look at it, it's like most people don't get any. There's people who are in sales who've never had any sales training.
No.
But they've just looked at people and took a little bit what they like of someone else, and no one's ever, and people don't have it. It's like when people go from internal to, say, business development, and it's like, really, they've never been showed how to go into a meeting. So in the end, they have meetings that just talk about football. They have a coffee, they have a bit of a nice chat, and no one actually asks for the business. It's just they might get the opportunity just because there's a rapport between two people, but there's actually no knowledge of learning about first operation or any value where they can get extra margins or any of that stuff, because people just don't invest in the people because they're going, well, we're bringing someone in, they're on 40 grand, company car, let him go and hit a few names, and let's see what he can get. And if you don't do a very good job, then we just get rid of him and we go on to the next one until we get a different result.
No, absolutely. And I know for a fact that there's plenty of MDs or hiring managers out there, and their mindset is, well, they've been doing it for a long time. I'm paying them. They should know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But they've never investigated that assumption. And so it's just a self-perpetuating assumption. And like, you go to a coffee shop, you go to a lot of coffee shops, and they kind of, in their marketing, they say, like, our specially trained baristas have had, special training to, like, genuinely, people selling coffee, they often get more training to sell the coffee or make the coffee than you would do if you're selling machinery that's costing £500,000.
When I worked at Phones for You, we did a week in Stoke, and that was we did. Then we did another week, so we did 2 weeks total. And then literally, you had like what was classed as a queue sheet. And basically, sitting down with someone down, you'd be like, are you on pay as you go or contracts? Circle. What network are you on? Boom. Which network don't you like? And you'd literally just going through a sales process. And every time you followed that sheet, come to the end, if it was saying like, I was spending £70 a month, but really your bill, you want it to be 40, you could just go back. It was like your tool. But then once I got into the world of B2B, I think I've had 2 training courses on sales, and one of them since we're working here with yourself. And it's almost like, well, you just got to get on with it. But there's loads of people who are taking inbound calls, say in the metals manufacturing sector, and they've brought loads of new machinery or they've brought a new stock range, and the people who are the account managers don't know how to cross-sell. And you're right, those kind of McDonald's, when you go through the drive-through, they're taking you through a sales process. Do you want to go large? Do you want to try this? Do you want to go, if you always are on a code trying to get on the app, then you go to the next one, and it's going you through a process all the way through. And they're almost doing more selling than people do in the world of B2B.
But it's interesting what you say, because you're basically saying you learned to sell when you were at Phones for You.
That's right. Yeah.
And since you're at Phones for You, that's been like almost, I was a weapon there. I absolutely smashed it because you knew what you were doing and you excelled in that place. I had the same when I did repping, did like 3 weeks of solid sales training, and then just was like, right, how do I become the best at that thing? But then when you meet people later on in life, when they're like the salespeople in their 40s and 50s, the ones who are earning really big money that are doing really well, they all have the same conversation, which is, well, I actually only got trained when I was like at 20, or I worked with someone who was just really good at selling at this company, which is like,
but the point is, it's not that you're a weapon. It's that sales process is created that it's like, if you follow that process, you will close more deals than not. You could have someone with a less of a personality than, say, me and you, and they would still, you might get more, but not that much more, because the people who used to underperform in, say, Phones for You were the people who would speak to someone at the wall, try and close the deal on the shop floor, instead of sitting them down and inviting them for a coffee.
Yeah.
The people who did that, guess what? They were the top performers because they're following the process. As soon as you go off process, to then when you think, oh God, I'm going to lose it, to try and bring them back onto a sales process, it's too late. And that's the problem. These are so well designed. It's like, it's almost you can't fail. It's like when you kind of go to buy, say, DFS, or you go to one of those type of shops, and you're almost like, I'm in the sales process, and it's almost that scripted. It's sometimes a bit cringy because you're like, well, I know where it's going now. But equally, it's, if you're there to buy, say, a sofa, you will buy one because of that process.
Do you suffer from any of these problems? Are you asking around your office trying to find a new supplier or source materials? Have you got aged or high-priced stock that you'd like to liquidate anonymously? Or would you like new business from customers that are guaranteed to pay you for your materials? If the answer to any of the above is yes, then you'll be pleased to know that the Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by SteelBuy. SteelBuy are a digital platform revolutionising the way businesses trade metal products online. SteelBuy offers risk-free trading where sellers are guaranteed to be paid, and automated processing including certification, logistics and invoicing. The network of vetted buyers and sellers is continually growing, and it's all housed in an easy-to-use trading platform accessible on any device. The online business-to-business marketplace for products is rapidly gathering pace, and SteelBuy are ideally positioned to capture the changing demands of steel buyers. So check out SteelBuy today and be part of the future of metal trading. Now let's jump back into the podcast. Just before we go deep into this, because there's loads to talk about in that specific sector. Salespeople, and again, big generalisation here, not always that good at following process. And also, salespeople, not always that good at being told to do something and then do it, or read the book, or they're just those natural type of. There's almost like a cliche. That's a salesperson. That's the type of person who's going to work in that sector. So, why did you read a book? And then the question is really, after reading the book, because loads of people read loads of books and then do absolutely jack with I've read all this stuff, this is brilliant, they do nothing with it or talk about it. How did you actually use, or did you use the stuff that you learn? Explain.
So in my head, there's some people in different areas in life, they're just going to be successful. So in the world of sales, there are some people, for whatever reason, they got natural charm, charisma, they're persuasive, whatever. They just do what they do. In the world of romance and getting girls, there's just some guys that they're just attractive. So they're what we call a natural. They just turn up and be themselves, and they get the end result. So if you think of football, it's like some people, they're just born with magic in their feet, the Messis, the Ronaldos, these kind of people. That's fine. I'm not in that category, and I don't think the majority of people are in that category in sales. So for me, the interesting thing is, okay, there are some people that are just always going to knock it out of the park in sales. For all the rest of us, what can we do? We don't have any God-given talent. There's a process that I can follow. If I do this and do that and do the other thing, I'm going to make more money. That was what was interesting to me. There's a process I can follow that's going to help me, that's just in that kind of average zone, actually do really well. Because the people that are going to knock it out of the park are just going to knock it out of the park anyway. Maybe it's 5% of the population, 2.5%, whatever it is. So I think the mistake sometimes, you can look at super high performers in any discipline, and you ask them what they do. It's, I don't know, I just do it. And you think, so I've got to be confident and follow my gut. It's like that works for them. It doesn't necessarily work for you. It's like if you maybe, and I don't know this for a fact, but maybe if you ask David Beckham, how do you take a free kick? He's just like, I just kick it and it goes in. But if you ask someone else, it's like, right, you got to do this and you got to do that and you got to do the other thing. That's the bit I'm interested in. What's the structured process that you can follow to get really good?
So you read that stuff. It appealed to you because you'd read the stuff about dating and maybe picked up women. So you were like, that worked. Okay, let's try this and see if this works. I'm guessing you had some initial success, because that's generally what you try. A little bit of something, you get a little bit of, and you think, oh, wow, actually that worked. I'm surprised that worked. So how did you then develop that? Talk about some of those successes and how much of that was just by following the process or some latent ability, because there is that as well, just naturally having a bit of a gift of the gab or an ability to actually like have a conversation or hold a conversation with someone at a level. So talk to me about some of those early successes that you had specifically in your career and what that looked like. And maybe because someone who might be listening to this is like, okay, fair play, look, I'm selling already, or people that are not so good at selling, but they want to know why, what were the stages and how did you develop?
So I'll give you an example. At some point in my career, I went through a stage where I was selling training. Before I went into sales training, I was selling training on LinkedIn and how people could use LinkedIn, social media in general, to get more leads. So I was kind of focusing that on helping business-to-business salespeople get more leads from LinkedIn. So when I started out, I really liked LinkedIn. I was using it to sell adhesives and machinery and getting leads that way. And I was realizing that I kind of enjoyed the training stuff even more, and that I really wanted to spend more time doing the training and develop that. So when I would get someone that was interested, I'd get a lead come in for the training, and pretty much as soon as I got to speak to them, I'd go into some kind of pitch. Oh, you're interested in training? Look, that's fantastic. We've got some really fantastic training. Can I tell you about our great training courses, etc., etc., etc. I'd go into a pitch basically. And one of the things I learned, might have been something someone told me, might have been something I read in the book, was no, don't start off like that. Don't start off with a pitch. That's what every other salesperson out there does. And people don't believe what salespeople tell them. So there's no point going into a pitch. You sound like every other salesperson out there. And what I learned was you've got to start off with some questions that get them to come up with a reason they want to buy. So I flipped from, hey, my training's great, let me tell you about how brilliant it is and some of the fantastic results we've got, to, oh, you're interested in sales training? LinkedIn training. You're interested in LinkedIn training? And any reason? I mean, you could probably train yourself. Why don't you just go on LinkedIn and figure it out? And people would tell me a reason that wasn't a good idea and that they wanted training. I would say, well, why don't you just go and figure it out yourself? And they say, well, because that's going to take a lot of time, and it would be better to follow a clear process that someone else has developed. So they were just telling me the reasons that they might want to buy my training course, like within the first few minutes of speaking to them. And that was a huge change. And at the time I was self-employed, so my income went up. I was closing more of those opportunities, getting more of those deals over the line. So it made a direct, tangible impact on what I was earning, and lowered my stress levels dramatically, because, of course, if you're self-employed, if you don't sell anything, you got big problems. Yeah. So that's what got me thinking, God, there's something in this, you know? What else could I change and improve in my sales process?
So if you go into, prior to going in sales training, you're selling, what was the product you said you were selling? Industrial
adhesives.
Adhesives. I mean, difficult to make that interesting.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, so humour me.
Yeah.
Humour me. I'm someone who's in the market and I might need to buy industrial adhesives. I'm guessing that I would Google it. Or be referred on, or I'm getting an adhesive because I'm building a unit or doing something, and the person that I employ to do the build just uses it. Why should I care about the adhesive? Because effectively, so long as it bonds, who gives a toss? So what I want to know is, you're selling that product. How do you do that? How do you differentiate yourself from other? I mean, I didn't even know there was that many of them. So to kind of talk to me about that when you were in that line of work and what you were trying to do based on what you'd read in a book.
So this is like high value business to business products and services in manufacturing kind of engineering applications. So a lot of them are already using some kind of adhesive to stick different substrates together as part of some kind of continuous manufacturing process. So the first step is really understanding if they had a problem that our adhesives could potentially solve. So lots of adhesives out there. Ours were a fairly expensive adhesive, an expensive option that had some unique properties in terms of their viscosity and melt temperatures, these kind of things. So we've got to find out early why someone might want to pay more. They could go and buy a generic adhesive, a cheap sort of polyester adhesive from anywhere. Loads of suppliers out there. So the first step is we've got to find out if there might be a reason that they would want to pay more. And the thing I learned in the book was that, people don't buy stuff because of your features and benefits. I could tell them all day about, we got this massive research facility in Switzerland, and we got all these amazing chemists, and we've been doing it as a company for like 70 plus years. And, these adhesives are the premium quality and all kind of stuff like that. But of course they don't care. They've heard it before. It's like yawn, yawn, yawn. But if I can help them figure out that they have a difficulty in their production process that's costing them unnecessary money, costing them unnecessary time, and that maybe there's a possibility we could take those issues away, now they might be interested. And I want to help them figure out in their own minds why they might want to pay more. The thing I learned in the book was there's no point me saying, hey, our stuff can save you time and money. I don't know that for sure until I found out more. What I want to do is find out from them if they have the kind of problem that we might be able to fix. So that means just asking them loads of questions about their production process. How's the production process going? How does it work? What kind of technology are they using? And getting them to talk about their favourite subject. So what do you think their favourite subject is?
Themselves.
Yeah, themselves. Absolutely. So that was like lesson number one from me, is that people like to talk about themselves. When you're speaking to these buyers in these big manufacturing companies, get them talking about themselves. What's going well for them, what's going well in their production process. And the more they talk, the more information they give away, and the more you can build up a picture of if and why they might be interested.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by TW Metals. TW Metals are a stockholder and distributor of nickel alloy, aluminium, titanium and stainless steel products in a range of forms, including tube, bar, pipe, extrusion, as well as sheet and plates. They have sites located in the UK, Europe, the USA and Southeast Asia, and are the largest supplier of aerospace tubes globally. With a whole host of accreditations and in-house processing capabilities, they are the first choice for OEMs, Tier 1s, fabricators and engineering companies across the world, and they're easy to deal with. I worked with them for many years, so I can recommend them. For more details, check out their website or even give them a call to chat about your requirements. Now let's get back to the pod.
Any eureka moments at that kind of early stage? Because let's say if we roll back 10 minutes where I was saying, right, you've read this stuff.
Is it?
There's still just a natural skepticism about kind of, well, this seems so logically, so basic, this can't really work. People must be more intelligent than this.
Is this?
So was there anything where, again, if you're talking about maybe those products, because again, I'm still looking at it and thinking, well, I'd assume that just by whatever, as long as it works, who really cares? But what happened? Where was that kind of that eureka moment that you spoke to someone in the way you're explaining that? To tell us a little bit more about that.
So back in those days, some of the eureka moments were, I used to spend a lot of time going to meetings, and often they were right up north where the textile industry kind of used to be, right down in the southwest where there's a lot of composite industry, carbon fiber stuff. So I used to spend a lot of time driving up and down the motorway, going to these meetings, and one of my big annoyances was the number of meetings that just turned out to be, like you were saying earlier, a cup of tea, some biscuits and a chat. But I didn't make any money out of it. It was all, I realised over time, it was just driving up and down hoping that something useful would come out of it. And too often nothing did. So one of my big eureka moments was when I realised, hey, no point driving for 3 hours just to have a nice chat. Could save that time. Wouldn't it be good if I knew that was going to be a good use of my time? So asking early, before I've had the meeting, hey, we're probably a bit more expensive than a lot of the other adhesive suppliers out there. Is this important enough to you that it might be worth blocking, 90 minutes out of your diary? what would make that a good use of your time? What would you need to find out or learn that would make this a really valuable use of your time? And then listening out for the people that could give us a good reason. Like, if they couldn't think of something, probably not much point me going all the way up there. If they couldn't think of any reason that it would be useful, or all they could come up with was, well, you could tell us about your company, I already know it's going to be a waste of time. But if they can say, well, look, we got this extruder that's feeding adhesives in, and we're having a real problem getting the melt temperature to stabilize at this point. If you had something that could do that, that would be really useful. Well, now I know there's something clear and specific. So whereas before, I used to wait to the meeting and see if something good came out of it and have my fingers crossed, one of the eureka moments was just be up front, get all that stuff out in the open. Hey, what would make this a good use of your time? What would you need to know for this to be a productive meeting? And let them fill in the blanks. So that was certainly a eureka moment, was just having less meetings and just being much more protective of my time.
I think confidence is one of the things that it takes time to have some of those successes. And, Mike and I have spoken about it, where you could end up with a junior salesperson. You can give them 1,000 names to ring, and effectively they're burning data because they're having to almost learn by making mistakes to actually get to a point where they've done 3 months, 6 months, 12 months listening and going on meetings and stuff before they start to become, even useful. But then it's that, to get to that point where you then become confident, you have these kind of peaks and troughs. So what I'm interested in is you're asking very direct questions. Again, in this environment, we're just talking about it. We haven't got someone on the phone. You're not trying to think on your feet. It's a lot easier to do that. And you've been doing sales training for 6 years now. So you're used to doing this and used to presenting this way. But again, talk to someone who's more junior. I'm talking someone who's in a sales role, maybe 6 months or something like that. How or why should they ask, or why should they be confident enough to ask those type of questions? What's holding them back, and how do they get through it?
So number one, we've got to look to hire people. Like, what do you think happens if you hire people that aren't comfortable trying something different and getting out of their comfort zones? What do you think happens?
No, they leave.
Yeah, they leave. Like, they don't do what you want. So part of this starts just in the hiring and recruiting process. Like, if you're going to ask salespeople,
assume they're not crap.
Okay.
So you've hired, right? I've got someone
you've hired
who I'm
good.
like, this person has potential.
Yeah.
But just because someone has potential, it's right. How quickly can I get someone from having potential to being confident? And if we've got them say it takes 2 years, it's like, well, how do I bring that down to 2 months? How do I bring it down to 2 weeks? How can I do that day 2?
Yeah.
So that's what I want to know. It's like, how do you, as that salesperson who has potential, without having good, because sometimes you've got poor managers above you. This is typical that managers, they're not always great salespeople.
No.
But they've dropped into a managerial position because they might have been there the longest, or they've worked in operations. You see loads of operation managers, you see loads of people who are doing accounts, who are running companies. You're like, you never sold a stick of anything in your life, but they're the ones going, oh, come on. But realistically, if you've got someone who's actually got that aptitude, how do you get them to break through?
Number one, you've got to have a default best practice. We call it set of talk tracks. It's not a script, but you've got to have a default framework along the lines of say this, ask this, do this, say that, ask this, ask this, ask this, as part of a clear sales process. You've got to have a framework. That's number one, because if you've got a framework where you can say to a new sales hire, hey, call these numbers and then say these questions and these statements, over time, you're going to tweak and develop them as you get more confident, but this is where you start. This is like a best practice, good call. If you've got people that have got the ambition to follow that, then they'll break through and they'll get there. As long as they are willing to do the work, they'll get there. Worst thing you can do is hey, here are some business cards. Go for it. I'll leave you to it. Because it's just lazy, it doesn't work. It's like being a football manager, bringing in a new player and then saying, hey, you've been doing this a few years. I trust you. Just turn up on match day and, do your best. So you've got to have written out best practice. This is what you say. These are all the right questions to ask. And then repetition.
So like you were saying, phones for you, you had effectively talk track. Is that what you called it?
We call it a talk track.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that in the world B2B, when you're selling adhesives, tubes, metal, the companies I've worked in, there's no sales process.
Yeah.
There's literally zero. It's like you do a job. And in the end, what happens is what we'll see coming. When the market's booming, naturally these companies do well because there's that much demand that basically what you're winning work on is price. That's what it comes down to. The skill element, the technical things, at that point, they go to a different type of distributor for that issue, i.e. where you're doing your adhesives top end, so the mills will pick it up or whatever. But because they don't have a sales process, it's like when people are coming in, they're not asking the basics. Is it an order to place? Have we ever dealt with you before? Do you have an account? Just really basic things that takes them through. And then it's talking about going, most of the times during COVID, when companies were doing well, it's because staff were on furlough. They were starting to do first operation. So the margins were higher. They were adding more value. Then they started purchasing more into machinery because these kind of services, they were finding they were working. But now, when I listen to a lot of kind of business owners of the struggles they have, because the market's dipping, they're looking at the team that's been built over a booming market, and actually, people who are say, entrepreneurial or sales drivers, they're not there. But it's kind of, no one seems to, what they'll do then is just take someone from a competitor, and actually they might have 2 or 3 people who actually, they had a process, would just gain more business just off what they've already got without even having to win any more.
Yeah.
But why do you think it is that business owners or people in a position, whether in big groups, don't, not necessarily value, but don't look at, doing it? Do you think it's because they think it's, if they look at the sales as a sales manager, say, actually I need to develop my own internal team, then it's like almost like they've made bad hires? Or do you think, what do you think the reason is?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think some of it is because there's a very low barrier to entry for getting into sales. There's no barrier to entry for getting into sales, and anyone can have a stab at it. And if they keep trying, they'll get some results, and maybe they'll get okay results or even halfway decent results. There's no technical qualifications you need to do it, and the worst that can happen is you don't get an order. No disaster's going to happen. So I think a lot of, especially entrepreneurs, they're full of passion. They build a business just on raw ambition and doing things their way, their entrepreneurial flair, and all this kind of thing. And then they look at their salespeople and they think, well, I got there through raw ambition and just getting out there and making stuff happen. Look at me now. That's what you should do, Mr. Salesperson. And so they don't put themselves in the salesperson's shoes, and they don't think, God, if I didn't immediately have the ambition to build a business from scratch, where would I be? Well, I'd be wanting guidance, and I'd be wanting to know what I should ask at what stage. So they don't consider it from the salesperson's perspective. And I think maybe they don't see the added benefit. They don't always see the added benefit of, well, if someone's performing at this level, what would their results look like if they had extra support? It's like the difference between someone trying to play football on natural talent versus trying to play football having been trained, conditioned, coached and developed over months and weeks.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a recruitment agency operating in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. With a large, engaged network of candidates and clients, we help businesses make great hires in sales, operational, technical, quality and managerial roles, as well as assisting people in their careers by matching their unique skills and aspirations to businesses that are hiring. Having worked with more than 200 niche businesses since 2019, Compton Group have become the go-to recruitment partner for many of our industry's leading names. So talk to us about your next career move or let us work with you on your business's next hire. Compton Group, powering employment in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors.
What would you say about those who talk about, worked in one environment where basically it was just a numbers game?
Yeah.
The more phone calls you do,
Yeah.
the more outside emails you send, the more videos you do, the more money we'll do. It's just that's just the basic of how we'll do more business. To kind of say, compared to say your route where it's a lot more strategic, trying to, because when we've gone and spoke to yourself, it's almost going, we might find that we're not right for each other from a kind of, we might not do any business.
Yeah.
So like, what would you say to those kind of companies who are just volume?
So we teach this, we call it the success triangle. It's just a triangle that represents the 3 areas that you need to really maximize to do well in sales. One of them is behavior, which is, are you doing enough activity? Are you making enough calls? Are you getting out there enough, speaking to enough people? Like, nothing works unless the salesperson does. Nothing works unless you do. So that's part of it. But then the other 2 parts are technique. Are you saying the most helpful words? And the third part is mindset and attitude. There's a big difference between saying the right words, but you're just reading them off a script, and saying the right words with the right kind of tonality and confidence so that people might actually believe you. So it's behavior, attitude, and technique. So those people that are doing, really just focusing on volume of activity, great. Ticking one of the boxes. Think where you could be if you really honed and perfected that technique and people did it in a way that they actually believed what they were saying.
When you were initially asking that question, you were kind of basing it more on, you were a manager within a company, like we've got a different team. Like the premise of that was, we've hired in COVID, stuff's got harder now, maybe haven't quite got the team that's right, and it's almost like, how do we then develop those salespeople that we've got to perform in a different market?
Well, it was just easier, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Like if you look at it now, what people are talking about, say going into 2024, you hear people talking about it's going to be a hard year, might have a recession, there's going to be an election, or they almost become negative reasons. It's almost like we're going to have a bad year now. It's that kind of attitude. But there'll also be a lot of opportunities. In every recession, there's always people who do very well. But if it's harder and you're having to get rid of, say, some people, and you've got your team that you're sticking with, there's still a level of being able to get more, isn't there? And I do think companies, like I say, I've had very little training. So all you're trying to do is go, what works? And then the things like you were talking about earlier is every salesperson then gets an ego of what they think doing. But then every time you win an order, it works, and you might win it the wrong way. You end up cutting your process right down. So even when you're doing your BD going for volume, if you get so used to saying the world of recruitment that we're doing, where it's like, you have to speak to HR, fobbed up, your calls that you're even doing start even becoming weaker and weaker and weaker, don't they? To the point that sometimes you'll pick up a job just because someone they give it to every agency. But it's like, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No. Well, I think where I was going to go with it was like, when markets get tougher, you need good salespeople for exactly the point that you're making there, which is you start ringing, and it's almost, if you get megged out, as we would say, about, oh, things are tough, this isn't quite happening, I'm not quite getting the rub of the green, you end up taking anything. So you end up taking a job, as you're saying, that's been given to everyone else. We don't want that job.
No.
I don't want to be with the pool with everyone. I can't be bothered, low margin, all the wrong things. I don't need that job. But because you're being pressured on, we need to get business and we need to get orders, like you were saying when you were self-employed, I just need to get some deals over the line. You can start watering down your process. Now, what I wanted to ask was, right, we're not a manager, I'm a salesperson.
Yes.
And I'm working in a company and it's tough. And it doesn't matter if it's long sales process, short sales process, you're just in sales. That's where I'm at. Now, I don't have a manager that's giving me the talk tracks. So I'm going to do that myself. So let's make an example up. I'm selling the cliche, high volume, relatively low margin. It could be shims, it could be washers, gaskets. Let's have a look at that type of process where you're trying to sell volume into a market sector saturated, lots of competitors. You've got no one giving you anything apart from just sell this stuff that we've got on the shelf here. Talk to us about how you would start to develop your own talk track if you don't have a management team that is helping you do that.
I would start with writing down what's your desired end goal. So that might be a certain sales number, might be a certain end result that you're looking to get. And you've got to start working backwards to figure out how you reverse engineer and get to what is it you need to be doing, saying, asking each and every day that, all other things being equal, is going to get you to your end result. So from a numbers point of view, that's going to be, right, I want to sell this much. My average order value is X, so I'm going to need 10 of those to make my total target. Let's say that, you convert 1 out of 3 opportunities. So now maybe you're going to need 30 opportunities in your pipeline, and you just keep working back until you get, right, how many initial conversations am I going to have every day? And then that's your number. So, when they say, sales is a numbers game, well, the questions are, well, what are the numbers and what's the game? And the thing there is, you need to know your number. If it's a numbers game, I don't think it's helpful to say, well, the more the better. Because where do you stop? Most people don't want to work 16 hours a day. They want to have a number that they can hit. And they know if they keep hitting that number every day, all other things being equal, they're going to get where they want to go. So you've got to know your number. So I don't know if this 100% answers your question, but if I was a sales guy starting out, I'd want to know, what's my number? What's the level of activity I need to do every day that's going to get me where I want to go? And a best guess is better than no number. At least if you guess, you can figure out it's wrong and you need to do more or less. That's great. In terms of then working out what words you need to say, I'd start documenting really great questions that you can ask. You're going to make way more money in sales if you get good at asking questions than if you get good at just telling potential customers stuff. So I'd start writing down really good questions that you can ask and just slowly starting to formulate those into a set of talk tracks. Then you can refine and develop that as you go. The more you listen to, podcasts, read books, the more you're going to stumble on some good kind of questions that you can weave into your day-to-day discussions. And if you also have the mindset, especially like you gave the example of selling shims, gaskets, kind of low value stuff. So in that kind of world, your time is precious, right? So you've got to figure out quickly which people are serious and are probably going to buy, and which people are just looking for a quote so they can beat up their existing supplier, which people are time wasters and tire kickers. So then you've got to work on your talk tracks so you can ask some questions early that give you a sense of, is this person serious? And they might spend some money if we can show them something they like. Which people are just fishing for a quote that's going to, go in the bin, or they're not going to do anything with. They're just doing price comparison stuff.
If we go back to that example, volume sales, shims, washers, lots of customers out there, but you need to ascertain which are the good ones quick.
Yep.
Or relatively quickly, because you're going to have to do volume. Talk about some of the questions, or what would be the type of typical questions that you think, with your experience, are good questions to ask, or good strategies for the way you should talk to get that information.
The strategy is you've got to qualify stringently so that you can close easily. You can kind of go into this thinking, how can I get rid of the time wasters early so that I can focus my effort and attention on the people that are really open to being influenced? So a few good questions might be things like, hey, there are a lot of other companies that sell what we sell out there. Any reason you're interested in us? I want the potential customer, I want to be listening out for if they say something that's meaningful, that really makes me realise they've come to us for a reason. There's something that they think we do special or differently that they like. And I want to know what that is.
How about if it's not you outbound, they don't know you,
Yeah.
Like, that's what I want to know. Like that's the thing. Not if someone phones you, bingo.
Yeah.
You rang me, mate.
Yeah.
So you obviously have got a problem.
Yeah.
They've got no problem. They don't even know you.
Outbound calls, yeah. Absolutely. So why do people buy stuff? Is it because of a company's features and benefits, or is it because they've got a problem that they want to be fixed?
It's features and benefits every day.
Every time.
Every time. Never a problem. Never a problem. Fab.
It's because they got a problem they need fixing, right? So most salespeople are taught, hey, get out there, tell people about how great we are. It's all features and benefits. It's all, we got the best quality, we're the most cost effective, we care the most. It's always a variation of those three things, right? That's not why people buy. They don't buy because of that. They buy because they've got a problem that they want solved. So if I want to sort out which people might buy from which people won't, I want to share with people, hey, these are some problems that we as a company fix. Do you have any of these problems? If they say, yeah, absolutely, then I know, hey, this person could be influenced, they might end up buying. If they say no, or they're like, I don't know, not really, could be a chance to move on. So think of it like if you were a doctor and you had the cure for asthma, and you'd go round to people and you'd say, hey, do you ever get out of breath even though you've only just walked, a short distance? Do you ever feel super tired for no particular reason? Whatever the symptoms of asthma are. If they say, no, run up 20 flights of stairs, I feel great. There's no point trying to sell them your asthma inhaler. You're just like, well, move on. But if they say, yeah, I get super out of breath even though I've only gone up one flight of stairs, right, could be something here. Tell me more. Tell me more about your symptoms. Diagnose. Only then do we give a prescription. So if we're doing outbound sales calls, it's, hey, do you ever have this problem? Do you ever have that problem? Do you ever have the other problem? If they say no, at least as a client we can move on. If they say, yeah, I have that problem. Oh, tell me more. And we've got to find out more, do some diagnosis, ask some good questions. Can you think of an example of that problem? What's the impact of that problem? And if they can give you a clear example and they can tell you a specific impact that that's having, very likely they could be a good potential customer. So the key there is when we're doing outbound calls, we've got to come up with, and we call this pain hooks, 3 good pain hooks, which are examples of the pains or problems that we know we can fix. We go out and we explain those pains and problems to people, and basically we say, do you have any of those problems?
It's also asking those questions, isn't it, like you're saying there? Because a lot of people, when they're making a cold call, it's like, hi, my name's Mark, I'm calling from Content Group. We're a metals and engineering recruiter.
If you're Mike.
But that's what I mean. They just have verbal diarrhea. There's some people that are absolutely awful at making cold calls. They don't ask any questions. They don't ask if they... And it's all the time. But it's almost like, I will talk up until you tell me you're going to give me your email address. And then look at getting an email address as a win. Yeah. Followed by sending an instructionary email. There's no kind of going through it. What's your pain? What hard positions do you find to fill?
Yeah.
We do this, do that. And it's the same when the people are selling metal.
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh yeah, we're competing with such cool, they do next day delivery. It's like, well, do you need next day delivery?
Yeah.
When you do get it, do you have any problems with it being damaged, or they're sending the wrong materials, or they don't have stock of certain things that you find hard to source, and I think so many people get into sales since habit when they're cold calling, so they're just going to talk at 100 mile an hour till they get the bit of information that seems successful to say they've done it, and it's not done at a level of enjoyment. It's more done as the worst part of the job.
Yeah.
Because we'll see it in our business, people, you'll give a list and it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing it. And you think, well, actually what you're doing is you're going on a website, you're looking at Meet the Team, you're going on LinkedIn, you're doing everything other than picking that phone up. So it's almost like if you can't do that, then it's almost like go and find a new job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you jump in that, and that's that. So, but really it's almost going, for us, when we're having that issue, we should be going, well, what's the issues you're having? How do you develop that person? Because it's not that you don't want to do it. It's like you're worrying about colleagues listening, having that embarrassment of a bad call. And sometimes I think in the world of, say, recruitment, or in some industries, say in the metals game, you can have almost a bad culture where people feel embarrassed to have rejection off a call.
Yeah.
And that's actually what stops people more than actually doing it. Someone going, that person's really good. But they might just be cold calling existing customers, not doing cold data.
Yeah.
So how would you change that environment in a business? Because people, you do hear it, don't you? But they go,
yeah. Well, that all starts with like the leader or someone at the top saying, this is the culture of the organization. And we all know we learn through failure, right? That's how you learn lessons. That's how you get good at something, is by being prepared to screw up, having a go, and then adjusting. So someone at the top of the organization, the leader, could be the sales manager, needs to let everyone in the sales department know, like, it's okay to screw up. Doesn't matter. One of the great moments for me, I had a sales manager. I think most sales managers are like, don't annoy the customers. Whatever you do, make a good impression. And he said, look, if you can be assertive enough and you piss someone off so much that they phone me to complain, I'll give you a bottle of vodka. Like, it doesn't matter. They probably won't even remember your name. Like, you've got to be assertive. Like, the more assertive you are when making cold calls, the better. You're not trying to sell them anything. You're just trying to find out, do they have a problem? Is it important to them? Are they open-minded to taking a look at some solutions? If they are, great. We should have a meeting because we can help. If they don't, it's fine. Move on. I'm not going to try and sell an inhaler to someone that doesn't have asthma.
But that's how you end up getting the wrong type of accounts. The amount of times, we've all been there, when you pick up a business and then you go, when it's coming to an end, you go, actually, you're glad to lose it. You start quoting like you put a massive increase on.
Yeah.
You're almost saying, I don't want it. But it's more because at the start, you never talked about understanding it. Like, it's gone on price, we've won it.
Yeah.
Then you haven't worried about where often I want delivery or all the other stuff that go along. And you end up picking up the wrong type of work, especially when the market goes quiet, because you almost become desperate to just get any type of work you can.
Yeah.
You almost go away from your bread and butter, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. This is like, I think the right mindset is like a doctor. A doctor doesn't want to create disease in their patients. In theory, at least, they want to find the people who've got problems, find out what the problems are, and find out what the right prescription is to help them get better. So if we think about that in sales, I think it really changes everything, because then we can go out there confident we got something of value, and we can ask people, hey, do you have these problems? If you don't, fine, we'll move on. If you do, tell me more about them. Where does it hurt? How long has it been a problem for? Give me some examples. We do lots of diagnosis, and then kind of confidently we can say, look, I think this sounds like the kind of problem we can help with. Is this important enough to you that we put some time in the diary?
When you're dealing with loads of different businesses, what's the most common thing that you see? Because you must have, like all businesses, like you're looking at yours when you're setting, what's the most common problem that most businesses have?
No common sales process or methodology. They've never written out or written down, this is the structure of calls and meetings that we go through to make a sale. And in the absence of that, everyone in the company does everything a bit differently. Everyone is doing some variation of the wing it approach. Hey, whatever it takes to get the deal over the line. And typically that approach is find people, give them all your information on what you do, the pricing and everything else, send it to them in a proposal, and then cross your fingers and hope that they like it. But of course, the minute you give away all your pricing, what do they need you for now? Like, they've got all the information. They can just sit on all the information and they'll say, hey, thanks very much. We'll think about it and get back in touch if we're interested.
Well, I disagree. I'd say they haven't got all the information. All they've got is a price. So they
think they've got all the information. Yeah.
But realistically, you've given them very minimal amounts. They don't really know. I mean, I think it's interested in the sector me and Mike are in, metal engineering, those businesses, particularly the mid-size and the larger businesses, and it happens with the smaller business as well. People in the business don't always know the full range of stuff they've got. They don't know the full capabilities of their own business. So it's like, how the hell is a customer meant to know what's going on with your business if the business itself are not? I mean, Mike's had examples, when he's had companies, like multiple companies ring him, asking him for codes. How do I get this? Whereas, they don't even know. So ringing someone external of a company to say, oh, how do I do this? What price should I go in at? It's pathetic. But it's like, there's a real issue, I think. And I think going back to what you were saying, is you can give someone a price for a specific thing, but realistically, no one knows the ins and outs of all the things that you're going to offer. And that price can then be watered down by, because anyone could do anything for a price. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to give you all of those features and benefits.
No.
All 12 of them.
As soon as you present that price now and you're over, they just stop taking
you can
exactly.
be gone. You can be gone.
You're gone. So it's like, soon as that...
That's not the point I'm making, though.
That's the point Tom's making, aren't you? You're saying once you give that price, it's almost they've got everything.
I was saying once you hand over your price, you've lost any potential influence or control, because
unless you're cheap.
If you're
cheap, they're over you like a rash. But if you're over, let's say you're 5% more expensive, that person probably won't ever speak to you again.
No.
Potentially.
No, because coming back to Pete's point, it's this idea that potential customers, like, they're not qualified to take the right decision, in the same way that if you go to see the doctor, assuming you're not a doctor yourself, if you go to see the doctor, you're not qualified to diagnose your medical condition. Customer is not qualified to diagnose what problem they have and what the solution is. Like, because if they knew both of those things, like, they wouldn't have the problem in the first place. They're speaking to a salesperson because they've got a problem and they don't know how to fix it, and they're hoping that this salesperson can give them a product or service that will fix it, but they don't know because they don't have enough knowledge. And the salesperson, if you've got what I would call like a sales professional, they'll treat that interaction a bit like how a doctor would treat it.
You enjoy doing that, pod?
Yeah, I did. I think both of us did. I think of a lot of the podcasts we've done, it's always good when you're talking about a topic that you're passionate about. You'd talk about anyway, wouldn't you? And I think sales, for both you and I, is something that we just find interesting. So sitting with someone to talk sales, hence why it's in two podcasts. This one's split because there was just so much to dive into.
The key thing for me is training and sales process.
What do you mean? Training
Like, I look at the sales training I've had two bits of sales training. One when I was at Phones for You. The second bit was when I was here trying to push media.
Yeah.
Whenever I worked within the kind of B2B world, I've had no training whatsoever. And I think, considering that stockholders have, like, I say it the word, evolved in a way. So many people have multi-products, so many people have multi-metals, people have value-added processes, where they're adding value, that on a day-to-day in their businesses, they're listening to people who are speaking to people who are cold calling and not mentioning all the different parts of their business.
But it's hard. When you're talking to someone, it might take you a while. If it's a cold call, for example, like, you get through to someone, they give you a bit of an inquiry, and you're almost like, well, I've got the inquiry. So to try and list everything is tough.
You got to have a process. That's like saying something, if you're putting an order on the system, and then you have to then put it on the system, it has to be then printed off, put a delivery note going on. It's still a process, but it's not something you do.
I was just playing devil's advocate there.
Yeah, of course you are.
See what happened.
Yeah, but that's the point. It should be. It's like, it doesn't need to sound like this is a cold call and it sounds like you're being sold PPE, but you need to take someone through a sales process. So it needs to be, I'm speaking to you today. We specialise in multi-metals. What metals do you purchase? I buy, carbon steel, no problem, but there's no synergy. Bang. There's the next person, we buy stainless aluminium. In what forms? Yeah. And it's kind of, okay, great. What's your first operation of what you do? Oh, we cut the tubes. Okay, brilliant. Like, we do in-house cutting facility. What else do you do? Do you have it tube laser? Like, people don't ask. There's not many times when you just go on the road and you go, oh, I didn't know you'd done that. And the reason you don't know is because people on the desk don't ask the question. You know, it's like looking at doing the research on a company, isn't it? You might have a company who's turnover £10 million of a turnover and they're a metal fabrication business, but you're only doing 100k. So either someone's making an incredible ROI on that 100k, or there's a load more expenditure being purchased on metal. Of what's going on.
But that's why it was, you know, a good pod. I think we decided we want to get Tom in because we'd had some experience specifically with him. And again, this is not endorsed by Tom or Sandler. We just, again, thought it'd be an interesting topic. We thought it'd be relevant to the audience that listens to this podcast. And we had some experience with him where we were trying to sell a new part of what we were doing as a business. And I think going and just having that chat and going through a sales process again and listening to someone say, this is the structure, this is how you do it, these are the questions you ask. It was almost like the two of us sat in a room feeling like idiots, really, because we're thinking, well, everything you're telling me, I already know. I've already been trained like this, like you, years ago in how to do this. And I've just cut all these corners and just haven't done it right.
I look at it like driving a car. You learn to drive and you have to drive perfect, or as good as perfect as you can, pass your test. As soon as you pass, you start creating bad habits because you get away with it. Like, you know, no one would start a car up and look after the left shoulder, look after the right shoulder, look at the do all of that stuff. You just get on. But the amount of people who have a crash within a certain distance of their house is incredible because they just, and it's the same with selling. You need to have a process, but people don't do it because people employ sales professionals and expect them to be able to just go, well, you're a salesperson, just make it happen.
This pod, as I say, we've split it into two because there was just so much to talk about. So next week we'll be back to talk more sales with Tom. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast, but we'd be really interested to know what your thoughts are on sales and particularly the sales process within metal engineering and manufacturing companies. And if you think it's, you know, as poor as what we're alluding to here. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next Tuesday. And thanks to the sponsors, TW Metals, Steel By, and our Sales Compton Group.
Yeah.